The conference hall on Vex Prime sparkled like a giant diamond under three suns. Inside, the greatest minds from 47 different species sat in their specialized seats, breathing their preferred atmospheres through personal shields. This was the Galactic Engineering Summit, held once every 10 years, and everyone who mattered was here. Jin-Ho adjusted his worn tool bag and looked around the massive room. The human section was small, tucked in the back corner. Earth had only joined the galactic community 30 years ago, and most species still thought of humans as the new kids who barely understood advanced technology. Next to him, his colleague HFY reviewed their presentation notes one more time. On stage, a tall insect-like alien with 6 arms was finishing his speech. Thexlar was famous across the galaxy for his mathematical precision. His species, the Vex, could calculate quantum equations in their heads. Right now, he was explaining a new energy system that was 99.7% efficient. The audience clapped in various ways. Some clicked mandibles, others flashed lights, and a few vibrated their bodies. Jin-Ho clapped with his hands, which made a few nearby aliens turn and stare. Next came Urina, a being made entirely of living crystal. She represented the Luminarch Collective, a hive mind species that many considered the smartest in the galaxy. Her voice sounded like music when she spoke about dimensional folding technology. The math was so complex that most species needed computers to understand it. Hours passed. One by one, species presented their achievements. Each one was more impressive than the last. Perfect materials that never broke, energy sources that never ran out, computers that could predict the future. Finally, the human turn came. Jin-Ho and HFY walked to the stage. Jin-Ho could feel thousands of eyes, sensors, and unknown organs watching them. Most seemed curious but not very interested. What could humans possibly show that would matter? HFY started the presentation. She spoke clearly and slowly so the translation devices could keep up. 6 months ago, the colony ship Bright Tomorrow suffered massive damage in deep space, she said. A hologram appeared above them, showing a large ship drifting in the darkness. The ship lost 90% of its systems, HFY continued. Life support failed, navigation failed, propulsion failed. The ship carried 2,000 colonists, including 500 children. The room became quieter. Several aliens leaned forward. Ship disasters were common enough, but usually they ended one way. Everyone died. Jin-Ho took over. We received their distress call. Our rescue ships were 3 weeks away. According to all calculations, the colonists had maybe 2 days of air left. He paused. But when we arrived 3 weeks later, all 2,000 people were alive and healthy. Murmurs filled the hall. Thexlar stood up, his multiple arms gesturing in confusion. "That is impossible," he said. "Show us the data." HFY pulled up the damage report. The hologram showed system after system colored red for failure. The numbers scrolled past. Life support at 4%, power at 12%, hull integrity at 30%. The list went on and on. Urina's crystal body pulsed with light, which meant she was thinking hard. "The mathematics do not work," she said, her musical voice now sharp. "With these damage levels, survival beyond 48 hours is impossible. What systems did you deploy?" Jin-Ho smiled. "We didn't deploy any systems. The colonists fixed things themselves." "With what?" Another alien called out. "What advanced technology?" "Duct tape, mostly," Jin-Ho said. "Some wire, parts from broken equipment, whatever they could find." The room went completely silent. Jin-Ho could hear his own heartbeat. Then the questions exploded. "What is duct tape? How does wire fix a life support system?" "You must have used emergency repair systems." HFY brought up video footage. It showed colonists inside the damaged ship working frantically. A woman was wrapping something silver and sticky around a cracked pipe. A man was connecting wires between two systems that were clearly never meant to work together. Children were holding flashlights while adults patched holes in the wall with metal sheets and some kind of sticky foam. "This is chaos," Velthris said. He was a snake-like alien known for his logical thinking. "There is no method, no calculation, no precision." "Actually," Jinho said, "there was plenty of method. They identified the most critical problems first. Then they found ways to solve each problem with whatever materials they had. When one solution failed, they tried another." "But the efficiency," Thexelar said, waving his arms at the screen. "That patch is only 30% as strong as it should be. That wire connection is losing 70% of its power. These are terrible solutions." "They're good enough solutions," Jinho replied. 30% of a hull is better than 0%. 30% of power is better than no power. The colonists didn't need perfect repairs. They needed repairs that would keep them alive for 3 weeks. Urina floated closer to the stage, her crystal form rotating slowly. "We must understand this," she said. "Our calculations show this survival was impossible, yet you show us proof it happened. There is something in human engineering that we do not comprehend." The other aliens began talking among themselves. Jinho could hear dozens of different languages blending together through his translation earpiece. Words kept repeating. Impossible, illogical, unexplainable. The head of the Galactic Engineering Council stood up. She was an elderly alien from a species that looked like walking trees. "This council makes an official request," she announced. "The humans must demonstrate their methods under controlled observation. We must see how you achieve the impossible." Jinho looked at Haiwan. She shrugged. They had come here expecting to be ignored, maybe to get a polite nod and a pat on the head. Instead, they had just made the entire galaxy question everything they knew about engineering. "We accept," Jinho said. "When do you want us to start?" "Immediately," Thexelar said. "We are building an observation arena now. You will receive a damaged vehicle with multiple critical failures. You will repair it using your human methods while we watch and record everything." As they walked off the stage, Jinho whispered to Haiwan, "I think we might have made a mistake." "Too late now," she whispered back. "The whole galaxy is watching. We either prove that human engineering works, or we become the biggest joke in 47 star systems." Behind them, the conference hall buzzed with excited conversation. For the first time in anyone's memory, the Galactic Engineering Summit had been surprised. The smartest species in the galaxy had encountered something they could not explain, and it was made by humans using duct tape. The observation arena floated in space above Vex Prime like a giant glass bubble. Inside, millions of aliens watched through holographic screens from their home worlds. Some had even traveled here just to see this strange demonstration. The humans who claimed they could fix the unfixable were about to prove it, or embarrass themselves in front of the entire galaxy. Jinho stood in the arena with 3 other humans. Haiwan was checking her tools. Bo-Ra, a materials scientist, was excited and couldn't stop smiling. Tai Yang, a quiet mechanic with gray hair, just stood with his arms crossed, looking at the damaged shuttle in front of them. The shuttle was a mess. The Galactic Council had made sure of that. They had deliberately broken multiple systems, then calculated exactly how long the shuttle would survive. Their answer, 4.7 hours before total failure. Thexelar's voice boomed through the arena speakers. "The test is simple. Keep this shuttle alive and operational for 72 hours. You may request any tools or materials you need." Jinho looked at his team. They walked around the shuttle, examining the damage. There were holes in the hull. The power core was making a dangerous humming sound. The environmental controls were barely working, and the air inside smelled wrong. "What do you require?" Urina asked. Her crystal form hovered nearby, watching everything. Jinho pulled out a list. Metal sheets. Any kind will do, something sticky that can seal gaps. Wire, lots of wire. Tubes that can bend. And whatever junk or broken parts you have lying around. The aliens looked at each other in confusion. These are not tools, Velthris said. These are raw materials. Don't you need diagnostic equipment? Fabricators? Nano-assemblers? Nope, Tae Yang said. It was the first word he had spoken. Just need basic stuff. Within an hour, the humans had a pile of random materials next to the shuttle. The aliens watched as the team got to work without any planning session, without any calculations, without even discussing what they were going to do. Tai Yang went straight to the hull breaches. He grabbed a metal sheet, bent it with his hands until it roughly matched the curve of the hull, then pressed it against the hole. Bo-Ra handed him 3 different sticky compounds. These shouldn't work together, she said cheerfully. But if we mix them, the chemical reaction might create something stronger. Tae Yang mixed the compounds right there on the metal sheet. The mixture started bubbling and hardening. He pressed it against the breech and held it there for 3 minutes. When he let go, the patch held. Velthris ran a scanner over it. The structural integrity is only 23% of the original hull, he said, sounding shocked. This will fail under any stress. Will it hold air? Tae Yang asked. Well, yes, but then it works. Meanwhile, Jin-Ho was inside the shuttle, looking at the power core. It was pulsing red, which was never a good sign. The safety systems wanted to shut it down, but that would kill all power. He needed to stabilize it somehow. He found a valve in the parts pile. It was from a completely different system, meant for liquid cooling. He attached it to the power core's exhaust port using wire and that same sticky mixture. Then he manually adjusted the valve, watching the pressure readings. The power core's humming changed pitch. The red pulse turned orange, then yellow. Thexelar was studying the readings. That valve is not designed for exotic matter reactors. It should melt instantly. Should, Jin-Ho agreed. But it's handling the temperature and pressure, so it'll work until we can do better. Do better? Thexelar's voice rose. You mean this is not your final solution? Nothing's ever final, Jin-Ho said. This'll last us a few days. If it breaks, we'll try something else. Bo-Ra was working on the life support system. The atmospheric processor was completely fried beyond any repair. The aliens had made sure of that. Without it, the shuttle couldn't recycle air. Everyone inside would suffocate in hours. She dragged over a flexible tube and connected it to an emergency air tank from the arena's supply. We'll pump fresh air in from outside, she explained. Arena's crystal body pulsed rapidly. But you are creating an open system. The efficiency loss will be enormous. You will waste 90% of the air. Waste is better than suffocate, Bo-Ra said. She was connecting multiple tanks with more tubes, creating a web of air supplies. Besides, we have plenty of tanks here. We just need to replace them every few hours. That is not a repair, Arena said. That is a temporary bypass. Exactly, Bo-Ra agreed. We're not repairing anything. We're keeping people alive. Big difference. Hei-Wan was rerouting power from non-essential systems. She pulled out circuits from the entertainment console, the decorative lighting, even the automatic door controls. She connected them all together using wire, creating new pathways for electricity. Velthris was watching with what might have been horror. You are creating multiple redundancy failures. If one connection breaks, the cascade will destroy everything. That's why I'm making 5 separate paths, Hei-Wan said. If one fails, 4 others keep working. If 2 fail, 3 others keep working. For all 5 to fail at once, we'd need really bad luck. But the probability is good enough, Hei-Wan finished. She powered up her makeshift system. Lights flickered on throughout the shuttle. They were dim, but they worked. The aliens watched in silence as the humans continued working. Every solution was strange. Every method was wrong. Every repair violated some fundamental principle. Yet the shuttle kept working. 12 hours passed. The aliens had calculated the shuttle would be dead by now. Instead, it was running at 40% capacity. 24 hours. The power core was still stable. The hull patches were holding. The air was breathable. 48 hours. The humans had made more temporary fixes to temporary fixes. Some of their early repairs had failed, so they tried different approaches. The shuttle now looked like a patchwork mess, but all the critical systems were running. 72 hours. The test was officially over. The shuttle was still operational. Thexlar stood in the middle of the arena, staring at his calculations. "This should not work," he kept saying. "By every principle of engineering we know this should not work." But it did work. The humans had done exactly what they promised. They kept a dying shuttle alive using nothing but basic materials and strange methods. "You have violated 47 fundamental principles," Velthris said. He sounded tired. "Principles that have guided galactic engineering for thousands of years. Yet your approach succeeds." Jinho shrugged. "Maybe your principles work great in perfect conditions, but reality isn't perfect. Reality is messy and things break, and you have to make do with what you have." Arena floated closer to the humans. Her light pulsed in a way that suggested deep thought. "We must understand how your minds work. Perhaps the answer is not in your methods, but in how you are taught to think." The Galactic Council came to a decision. They would send a delegation to Earth. They would visit human schools, human workshops, human homes. They would study how humans learn to solve problems. Because somewhere in the way humans were raised and educated, there was something the galaxy had missed. Something that let them look at impossible situations and say, "good enough," instead of "perfect or nothing." As the humans packed up their tools, aliens from dozens of species approached them with questions. "How did you know that would work? How did you calculate the probabilities? How did you plan your approach?" And every time, the humans gave the same frustrating answer. "We didn't know. We just tried stuff until something worked." It was an answer that made no sense to species that had built entire civilizations on precise mathematics and careful planning. Yet the evidence was floating right there in the arena, ugly and inefficient and perfectly functional. The galaxy's smartest minds were beginning to realize something uncomfortable. Maybe intelligence wasn't about knowing everything. Maybe it was about adapting when you knew nothing. The alien delegation arrived on Earth 3 weeks later. Thexlar, Urina, and Velthris stepped off their transport ship into a warm spring morning in Seoul. They were greeted by Su-Jin, a professor at Seoul Technical University. She wore comfortable clothes and had a friendly smile that seemed permanently attached to her face. "Welcome to Earth," Su-Jin said. "I hope you're ready for a very different kind of education system." Thexlar looked around at the city with his many eyes. Buildings of different heights and ages stood together. Some were brand new and shiny, others were old and patched. "Why have you not standardized your architecture?" he asked. "Because different buildings were made at different times for different purposes," Su-Jin explained. "We adapt our cities as we go. Nothing stays the same forever." That answer made all 3 aliens uncomfortable. But they followed Su-Jin into the university. The classroom was full of young human students. They sat at tables covered with tools, broken equipment, and random parts. It looked more like a repair shop than a place of learning. Urina had expected computers, simulation equipment, maybe advanced teaching machines. Instead, she saw chaos. Su-Jin stood in front of the class. "All right, everyone, today's challenge. Your city's water system just failed. You have a broken pump, some pipes, and whatever you can find in your toolkit. You have 1 hour. Make something that moves water uphill." The students immediately started working. They didn't ask for instructions. They didn't request the proper equipment. They just grabbed tools and started trying things. Thexlar watched a young man named Dong Ha. The student tried connecting pipes in one configuration. Water leaked everywhere. He tried a different way. Still leaked. On his 3rd attempt, He combined parts from two different failed approaches and created something entirely new. Water started flowing uphill. "He failed twice," Thexelar said to Sujin. "Why do you allow students to fail?" Sujin looked surprised by the question. "How else would they learn? Failure teaches you what doesn't work. That's valuable information." "But it is inefficient," Thexelar insisted. "You could simply teach them the correct method." "There is no single correct method," Sujin said. "Every real problem is different. We teach them how to think, not what to think." Velthris was studying the textbooks on Sujin's desk. He read through one quickly. "Your teaching materials are strange. They show problems with multiple possible solutions. Some problems have no solution listed at all." "That's intentional," Sujin said. "Real life doesn't come with answer keys. Students need to practice solving problems when they don't know the right answer." Urina floated over to observe a girl working on her water pump. The girl had tried 4 different approaches. All 4 had failed. Now she was sitting and thinking, looking at her pile of failed attempts. "You have used 60% of your time," Urina told her. "You should request assistance." The girl looked up. "Nah, I'm good. I learned a lot from these failures. Now I know what not to do." "But you have no working solution." "Not yet," the girl said with a grin. Then she started building again, using pieces from all 4 failed attempts. 10 minutes later, she had a working pump. The aliens watched the entire class session. Out of 30 students, only 22 created working pumps. 8 failed completely. "You allow 40% of your students to fail?" Velthris asked. "Fail today, succeed tomorrow," Sujin said. "Those 8 students learned just as much as the others, maybe more, because they had to struggle harder." After class, Sujin took the aliens to visit Kite's repair shop across town. The shop was small and cluttered. Parts were piled everywhere. Tools hung from hooks on the walls. It smelled like oil and metal. Kite was an old man with rough hands and permanent grease stains on his clothes. He had never been to university. He had learned his trade by working in shops since he was a teenager. When they arrived, Kite was repairing something that made Thexelar's eyes widen. It was a quantum resonator, advanced alien technology, and Kite was fixing it with human tools. "This device requires a Class 7 nanoassembler to repair," Thexelar said. "You cannot fix it with those primitive implements." Kite didn't look up. "Watch me." He used a regular screwdriver to open the casing. He examined the internal components with just his eyes and a simple magnifying glass. Then he pulled out some human-made parts from his shelf and started replacing the broken alien components. Urina scanned his work. "Those parts are not compatible. The frequency harmonics are completely wrong." "They're close enough," Kite said. He adjusted something with a tiny tool. "There, done." He powered up the resonator. It hummed to life, working perfectly. The aliens scanned it again and again. By all their calculations, it should not function. The parts were wrong. The configuration was wrong. Everything was wrong. But it worked. "How did you know this would function?" Velthris asked. "I didn't," Kite admitted. "I guessed it might work, so I tried it. If it didn't work, I would have tried something else." That afternoon, they visited Bora's laboratory at a research facility. Unlike Kite's cluttered shop, this place was clean and organized. But Bora's approach to problems was just as strange. She was working on a new material that needed to withstand extreme temperatures. She showed the aliens her notebook. It was filled with failed experiments. 17 different formulas, all crossed out. "Why do you keep a record of your failures?" Urina asked. "So, I remember what doesn't work," Bora said. "That's valuable data. Plus, sometimes a failed experiment for one project is perfect for a different project later." She showed them her 18th attempt. This one worked, but only barely. It could handle the temperatures, but it was brittle. "This is insufficient," Thexelar said. For now, Bora agreed, but it tells me I'm on the right track. Version 19 will be better. That evening, the aliens met with Jinho and Haiwan at a restaurant. Over dinner, they tried to make sense of what they had seen. Your entire civilization is built on acceptable failure, Urina said. You expect things to go wrong. Of course, Haiwan said. Things always go wrong. That's normal. But it is inefficient, Thexalar argued. Think of all the time wasted on failed attempts. Jinho shook his head. It's not wasted. Every failure teaches us something. We try, we fail, we learn, we improve. That's how we got from caves to spaceships. Our species designs to prevent all possible failures, Velthris said. We calculate every risk and eliminate it before building. That's great when you can control all the variables, Jinho said. But you can't control everything. Unexpected things happen. That's when you need humans who are used to things going wrong. We have a saying, Haiwan added. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. Murphy's Law. The aliens were quiet for a moment. Then Urina spoke. You have built your entire engineering philosophy around an expectation of failure. This is disturbing. It's realistic, Jinho corrected. The universe doesn't care about our plans. Things break. Conditions change. You can either freeze up when that happens, or you can adapt. But how do you teach adaptability? Thexalar asked. It seems like an impossible skill to learn. You teach it by letting people fail, Sujin said. She had joined them for dinner. In my classroom, students fail all the time. They fail safely, in controlled conditions, where failure won't hurt anyone. They learn that failure isn't the end, it's just information. Velthris processed this. In my culture, engineers who create flawed designs are punished. Failure is shameful. Here too, in some ways, Sujin admitted. But we try to separate bad process from bad results. If you tried your best and failed, that's okay. If you didn't try at all, that's not okay. The aliens spent 3 weeks on Earth, visiting schools, workshops, factories, and homes. They watched children build towers from blocks and laugh when they fell down, then build them again differently. They saw engineers test new designs, watch them fail, and immediately start on version 2. They observed mechanics who could look at broken equipment and just start fixing it without running any calculations first. Everywhere they looked, humans were comfortable with imperfection. They accepted that first attempts often failed. They understood that good enough was sometimes better than perfect. For species that had spent thousands of years pursuing perfection and precision, it was like discovering a completely different way of thinking. On their last night on Earth, Urina made an announcement. We must test this philosophy in a real crisis. Theory is insufficient. We need to see if human adaptability truly works when lives depend on it. The Galactic Council had already identified the perfect test. A research station in a dangerous nebula had gone silent. Something was very wrong, and the only ship close enough to help was a human cargo hauler. The aliens wanted to watch and record everything. If humans could save that station using nothing but improvisation, it would prove their methods worked. If they failed, well, at least the galaxy would know that human engineering had limits. Either way, the universe was about to get its answer. The research station in the Kelmar Nebula was dying, and everyone inside knew it. The electromagnetic storm had come without warning, ripping through their systems like an invisible knife. Now 30 scientists from 8 different species huddled in the central chamber, watching their instruments fail one by one. Korvax, the station director, ran through the emergency procedures for the 3rd time. His species valued order and rules above all else. The procedures said rescue ships would arrive in 22 days. The calculations said the station would become uninhabitable in 18 hours. We must remain calm, Korvax told his crew. Help is coming. Not fast enough, someone whispered. 4 hours away, the cargo hauler's steady hand received the distress signal. Captain Yuna read the message twice, then called her engineer. "Hyun-woo, we have a problem." Hyun-woo was young for an engineer, barely 30, but he had learned his trade on old ships where things broke constantly. He looked at the station's system readouts and whistled. "That's bad, real bad." "Can we help?" Yuna asked. "Maybe." Hyun-woo grinned. "Probably. Let's find out." Orbiting above the nebula, 3 alien observers sat in a monitoring ship. Thexlar, Urina, and Velthris had their sensors locked on both the research station and the approaching human vessel. They were recording everything. "The human ship is a basic cargo hauler," Velthris noted. "It has no engineering facilities, no repair equipment, no specialized tools." "Precisely why we chose this scenario," Urina said. "If humans can solve this problem, they can solve anything." When the steady hand arrived at the station, Yuna docked carefully. She had a crew of 4, herself, Hyun-woo, and 2 cargo handlers named Minho and Ji-woo. They entered the station wearing simple environment suits. Korvax met them at the airlock. "Thank you for responding, but I fear you cannot help. Our situation requires specialized equipment that will not arrive for weeks." "Let us look around first," Yuna said. "Maybe we can buy you some time." Hyun-woo immediately started examining the damage. The main reactor was pulsing with dangerous energy. The life support systems were failing. The hull had developed microfractures that were spreading. Every problem was connected to every other problem, creating a cascade of failures. "Okay," Hyun-woo said. "We can't fix this properly, but we can keep you alive until proper help arrives." "How?" Korvax asked. "You are a cargo ship. You carry goods, not repair systems." "We carry a workshop, spare parts, and experience," Hyun-woo said. "Watch." The first problem was the reactor. The station's safety systems wanted to shut it down automatically, but that would kill all power. Hyun-woo needed to stabilize it manually. He crawled into the reactor chamber with a valve he had pulled from the cargo ship's cooling system. The aliens watched in horror as he bypassed the safety controls entirely and installed the valve directly into the reactor's core. "That valve is not designed for exotic matter reactors," Velthris said, watching through the monitoring ship. "It will fail." But the valve held. The reactor stabilized. It was still dangerous, still unstable, but it would keep running for weeks instead of hours. Next came life support. The atmospheric processors were completely destroyed. Hyun-woo stared at the burned circuits for a moment, then shrugged. "We can't fix this, so we won't try." Instead, he ran flexible tubes from the cargo ship to the station. The steady hand's life support system started pumping air into the station. It was wildly inefficient. The cargo ship's systems were designed for 4 people, not 34. But Yuna did some quick math. "If we all breathe a little slower, use a little less oxygen, we can make this work," she said. "Breathe slower?" One of the scientists looked panicked. "How do we breathe slower?" "Stay calm. Don't run around. Rest when you can," Yuna said. "You'll be fine." The hull fractures were spreading. Every hour, more tiny cracks appeared in the station's walls. Proper repair required nanotechnology that wouldn't arrive for weeks. Hyun-woo looked at the problem differently. He pulled out cases of sealant foam from the cargo hold. It was normally used to protect fragile cargo during shipping. He started spraying it over entire sections of hull, covering the fractures with thick layers of foam. Korvax watched this with growing distress. "That is not a repair. You are merely hiding the damage." "I'm stopping it from spreading," Hyun-woo corrected. "The fractures can't grow if they're sealed under foam. It'll hold for a few weeks." "But the structural integrity is good enough to keep you alive," Hyun-woo said. "That's all that matters." Days passed. The humans kept creating solutions that horrified the aliens but worked. They cannibalized parts from the cargo ship. They used cargo straps to reinforce weak sections. They rerouted power through systems that were never meant to carry power. Minho and Jiwoo turned out to be excellent problem solvers, despite being cargo handlers, not engineers. When a water recycling system failed, they created a new one using plastic containers, tubes, and a heating element from a food warmer. On day 12, disaster struck. The makeshift power regulation system failed. Alarms blared throughout the station. Korvax immediately pulled up the engineering manuals, searching for the proper procedure. "There is a 17-step process to diagnose power regulation failures," he said. "We must follow it precisely." Hyunwoo was already climbing into the maintenance shaft with his tools. "Don't have time for 17 steps. Something's wrong. I'll find it and fix it. But you do not know what the problem is yet." "I'll figure it out while I'm working on it," Hyunwoo called back. He found the problem in 10 minutes by following the sound of sparking electricity. A connection had melted. He replaced it with wire and a connector from a door control system. Power stabilized. 20 minutes total. Korvax was still on step 4 of the diagnostic procedure. That was when something changed in Korvax's mind. He had spent his entire life following procedures, trusting in careful planning and precise execution. But these humans didn't plan. They just acted, adapted, and fixed things in real time. And it worked. "Teach me," he said to Yuna that evening. "Teach you what?" "Your way of thinking. I want to understand how you solve problems without procedures." Yuna smiled. "Okay, next time something breaks, you're coming with me. No manuals allowed." The opportunity came 2 days later, when a water pump failed. Yuna and Korvax stood in front of it together. "What does your manual say?" Yuna asked. "It says to replace the pump with a new unit." "We don't have a new unit. So forget the manual. What do you see?" Korvax looked at the pump, really looked at it. Not at what the manual said it should be, but at what it actually was. "The motor is burned out, but the pump mechanism itself is undamaged." "Good. So we need a different motor. Look around. What else here has a motor?" They found a motor in a storage door mechanism. It was the wrong size and the wrong voltage, but Korvax was learning. "We could adapt it?" "Now you're thinking like a human," Yuna said. "They spent 3 hours making that motor work with the pump. It was inefficient and noisy and would never pass any safety inspection, but it moved water." Korvax felt something he had never experienced before: pride in an imperfect solution. Day 18 arrived. The rescue ships appeared on the scanners. All 34 beings on the station were alive and healthy. The station itself looked terrible, covered in foam and patches and improvised repairs. But it was functional. When the rescue teams boarded, they stared in confusion at what the humans had done. Nothing was standard. Nothing was by the manual. Nothing was proper. But everyone was alive. In the monitoring ship, Arena made her announcement to the Galactic Council. "Human engineering methods are superior in survival scenarios. We recommend immediate integration into emergency protocols." Thexlar added his own note. "However, we still do not understand the underlying principles. The mathematics remain impossible." Velthrus had been quiet for hours, watching everything. Now he spoke. "Perhaps we have been studying the wrong thing. We analyze their methods, their tools, their techniques. But maybe we should study the humans themselves. There is something in how they think, how they approach problems, that we do not possess." Back on the station, Hyunwoo was packing up his tools. Korvax approached him. "Thank you for saving our lives, and thank you for teaching me a new way to think." "You're welcome," Hyunwoo said. "Remember, perfect solutions don't exist. Good enough solutions are everywhere if you look for them." As the steady hand prepared to leave, its cargo hold nearly empty from all the parts they had used, Yuna made one final log entry. "Rescued 30 scientists using duct tape, cargo foam, and improvisation. Station is ugly but alive. Mission success. Simple words for an impossible achievement. But that was the human way. The Galactic Engineering Council headquarters was packed. Every seat was filled, every viewing screen was active, and representatives from all 47 member species waited in silence. They had called this an unprecedented symposium, and the topic was simple: understanding human problem-solving. Jinho stood on the stage with Haiwan, Sujin, and Kite. They were not here to talk about technology or techniques. They were here to talk about something deeper: how humans think. Haiwan started the presentation. She showed images of Earth from millions of years ago. Our world was dangerous. We had predators that were bigger and stronger than us. We had limited food, harsh weather, disease. No natural weapons or armor. She clicked to the next image. But we survived, not because we were the strongest, not because we were the fastest. We survived because we could adapt. Jinho took over. Other species on Earth were better at specific things. Birds could fly, fish could swim, but humans could do a little of everything. We could learn, change, and try new approaches when old ones failed. Sujin showed more images, these from human history. Every major advancement in human civilization came from trying something new: fire, tools, farming, writing, machines, space travel. Each one started with someone trying something that hadn't been done before. Kite, who usually didn't speak much in front of crowds, added his part. And each one involved a lot of failures first. The first tools broke, the first farms failed. The first machines didn't work, but we kept trying. Thexalar raised one of his 6 arms. But this is the problem we do not understand. Why accept failure? Why not calculate the correct approach first? Because you can't calculate everything, Jinho said. Real life has too many variables. Conditions change. Materials aren't perfect. Unexpected things happen. You can spend years calculating the perfect solution, or you can try something now and adjust as you go. Urina's crystalline form pulsed with light. In our culture, and in most galactic cultures, failure is unacceptable. An engineer who creates a flawed design is disgraced. That's your problem right there, Sujin said gently. You've made failure into something shameful. For us, failure is just information. It tells us what doesn't work, which helps us find what does work. She pulled up images from her classroom. We teach our children that failing is normal, expected, even necessary. A student who fails 4 times before succeeding has learned more than a student who succeeds on the first try. Veltris spoke up. But the waste. Think of all the time and resources spent on approaches that did not work. It's not waste if you learn from it, Haiwan said. Every failed experiment teaches us something. Sometimes a failure in one project becomes a success in a different project. Knowledge compounds over time. Bora stood up from the audience. Can I add something? She walked to the stage. I've failed more times than I can count. I've had experiments explode, formulas that produced useless results, materials that didn't work. But each failure narrowed down the possibilities. Each one got me closer to something that did work. Your species has a saying, I believe, Urina said. If at first you don't succeed, try. Try again. Exactly, Jinho said. That's fundamentally human. We don't give up easily. We try different approaches. We improvise. We adapt. A young alien from the audience, an apprentice engineer, asked a question. But how do you know when to keep trying and when to give up? Kite answered this one. You don't give up unless lives are at stake, or you've truly run out of options, and even then there's usually one more thing you can try. Thexalar brought up a display. It showed calculations from the Kelmar Nebula rescue. Your methods on that station violated 47 principles of engineering that we consider fundamental. Yet you succeeded. Please explain how. Your principles work great in perfect conditions, Yuna said from her seat. But the universe doesn't give us perfect conditions. You design for the ideal. We design for reality. She stood and walked to the stage. Every human engineer knows that things will break. Power will fail. Materials will be wrong. The environment will be hostile. So we build systems that can handle imperfection. We call it redundancy, Yunwoo added, joining her. If one approach fails, we have two backups. If those fail, we improvise a fourth approach on the spot. Velthris was processing all of this. So, human engineering is not a specific methodology. It is a mindset, an expectation that perfect solutions do not exist. Now you're getting it, Jinho said. Perfect solutions are impossible. But good enough solutions are everywhere if you're willing to look for them. Urina asked the question that had been bothering her since the beginning. But how do you learn this mindset? How do you teach someone to think this way? Sujin smiled. You teach them through experience. You give them problems to solve. You let them try and fail and try again. You make failure safe so they can learn from it without real consequences. She showed videos from her classroom, students building things that collapsed, experiments that didn't work, designs that failed. And in every case, the students just started over with a new approach. In most galactic schools, students are taught the right answers, Sujin said. In human schools, we teach students how to find answers. There's a big difference. Dongha, the young student from Sujin's class, stood up. Can I say something? He walked to the front. I failed my first 6 projects in her class. It was frustrating, but each failure taught me something new. By Project 7, I understood how things worked in a way I never could have learned from just being told the right answer. Korvax, the station director from Kelmar Nebula, also stood. I wish to speak. He approached the stage. I have followed procedures my entire life. I believed that precision and planning were the only correct approaches. But the humans taught me something different. He looked at the audience. When our station was dying, I knew the procedures. I knew the proper steps. But the proper steps required equipment we did not have. The humans taught me to ask a different question. Not what is the proper solution, but what can we do right now with what we have? That change in thinking saved our lives, Korvax continued. I learned to see solutions where I previously saw only violations of procedure. I learned that good enough right now is better than perfect, too late. The hall was silent. Thousands of the galaxy's smartest beings were absorbing this information. For species that had spent millennia pursuing perfection, this was revolutionary thinking. Thexlar stood. I propose that the Galactic Council officially adopt human adaptive engineering as an alternative approach to traditional methods, not as a replacement, but as a complement. Urina agreed. Humans should be assigned to all crisis response teams. Their ability to improvise under pressure is unmatched. Velthris added, human teaching methods should be studied and adapted for galactic education systems. Students across all species could benefit from learning to handle failure constructively. The proposals passed unanimously. But more important than the official decisions was the change in understanding. The galaxy's smartest species had learned something fundamental about intelligence itself. Intelligence wasn't just about knowing things. It was about adapting when you didn't know things. It was about trying new approaches when old ones failed. It was about being comfortable with imperfection because perfection was impossible. Later that evening, Jinho and Kitai sat in a bar on Vex Prime. They watched an alien engineer struggling with a broken communication device. The alien kept running calculations, trying to determine the optimal repair approach. Finally, the alien gave up in frustration. Kaite walked over. May I try? The alien nodded. Kaite looked at the device, grabbed a tool, and started working. He didn't calculate. He didn't plan. He just tried things until something worked. 3 minutes later, the device was functioning again. The alien stared at the repair. But this violates the manufacturer's specifications. The signal strength is only 70% of optimal. Does it work? Kaite asked. Yes, but then it's good enough. The alien paused. Then slowly, he started to laugh. It was a strange sound, not like human laughter, but it meant the same thing. Understanding, relief, joy. Good enough, the alien repeated. I understand now. Not perfect, but functional. Not optimal, but sufficient. Exactly, Kite said. Back at the symposium hall, Heiwan was making closing remarks. The galaxy spent thousands of years pursuing perfection. You built incredible civilizations based on precision and calculation. That's amazing, and we respect it. But humanity offers something different. We offer adaptability, resilience, the ability to keep going when things go wrong, because things always go wrong eventually. Jin-Ho joined her. We're not saying our way is better. We're saying it's different, and sometimes different is exactly what you need. Work together, Su-Jin added. Combine alien precision with human improvisation. Use calculation when you have time and resources. Use adaptation when you don't. Urina's final words to the council were simple but profound. We asked why human engineering works when it should be impossible. We now understand. It works because humans accept that the impossible is just the improbable, and the improbable happens all the time. They do not engineer for perfect conditions. They engineer for real conditions, and real conditions are always imperfect. As the symposium ended and species began integrating human methods into their systems, something fundamental changed in galactic civilization. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly and surely. Engineering schools started including failure as part of the curriculum. Crisis teams started carrying basic tools alongside advanced equipment. The phrase, good enough, entered galactic languages. And somewhere on every world, when something broke and the proper parts weren't available, someone would remember. Humans would try something anyway. Maybe it would work. Maybe it wouldn't. But trying was always better than giving up. The galaxy's smartest species had been shocked by human engineering. But in the end, they learned the most important lesson humans had to teach. Intelligence without adaptability is fragile. But adaptability without giving up is unbreakable. And in a vast, unpredictable, often hostile universe, that made all the difference.